How are you doing? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the highest paid part-time job in the world, Options Training Academy. If you're here because you want to learn about the stock market con game. If you don't want to learn about it, you're in the wrong place. If you do want to learn about it, you're in the right place. And we're going to go ahead and get right into it. This is going to be a really good video for people that want to understand the rules of the con, how it applies to the stock market, and how to put yourself in a position where you don't get used and abused by the market. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a lot of historical examples. I'm going to give you a lot of real life examples so you can see this con. However, one of the biggest issues why people get caught in this particular con is because they don't understand the rules of the con. And what we're going to do really quickly is we're going to give you some of the rules of the con. We're not going to give you all of them, because once you understand the rules, you can understand when they're being presented in front of you so you don't get yourself in this position. And let's go ahead and get into them real fast. So here's some of the rules of the con. It's not going to be all of them. It's going to be some of them, because if you really want to learn all of them, you need to pay somebody to teach them to you. And the majority of y'all, the amount of money it's going to take to really learn these things the right way, you're not willing to make that type of investment. So you're just going to have to take what you can get from where you can learn it at. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So the first rule is to give you something to make you believe you took it, because you are so smart and I'm so dumb. So most cons work on giving you something and making believe you took it. So you feel good about what you're getting because you believe you have an advantage over the situation. And one of the reasons why you believe you have an advantage over the situation is because you believe, right, that you're so smart and the other person is so dumb. And one of the ways in which you work cons is you get the mark, right, the mark to believe they're smart. So the goal of the confidence man is to get the mark to believe, right, that he's really smarter than the confidence man. Then therefore, they don't realize, right, that they're being given something, right, but made to believe that they took it from the confidence man. The next thing you do is you got to understand is that over time, because of this relationship, eventually you'll hang yourself, and I'm just going to help you do it. Therefore, if I'm the confidence man, right, and you're the mark, I'm going to put you in a position, well, eventually you're going to hang yourself, and I'm just going to help you do it. Now, these are not all the principles of the con. I just kind of gave you the first two. I gave you some really basic principles, but most cons work on this principle. And therefore, you got to kind of understand this, right, when you're looking at the stock market, because the stock market involves confidence man, the stock market involves the inside man, and then the stock market involves a client, also known as the mark. And I'm going to get you to understand what I mean. The confidence men are what the people are that actually control the stock market, the big investment bankers. They control the stock market. They control the majority of the market. They utilize the majority of the capital that's involved in the financial market. So they use the liquidity inside the financial markets to get returns out of the market, right? They invest the majority of the money in the market, and they have the ability, because they have the capital, to push the market in the direction that they want it to go. The inside man is this. And so let me give an example. Let's say I want to rob a store, right? And I'm worried about the alarm system in that store getting me caught. What I do is I get a relationship with somebody that works in the store, and they're going to help me either defeat the alarm system, or they're going to give me enough information on the alarm system to where I don't get caught when I try to rob the store. Then I tell people, well, I got an inside person on this job. Therefore, this stock market con doesn't work without an inside man or inside woman based on who they are. And what we see a lot of times, and what we're going to kind of show you over the past decade, or really over the past 14 to 15 years, is that normally they try to utilize a Federal Reserve as the inside man. And what I mean by that is that they try to utilize a Federal Reserve to get the monetary policy that they need so they can get what they want to get out of the market. The client, aka the mark, is you. You're the mark. But they call you the client. Why do they call you the client? So you feel important, right? Why do we call you the client? So you can feel like you're getting something out of the market that you shouldn't be getting, but you are, because you're in this preferred position. You got some inside information. You got some special information. You got a special relationship with these group of people to where you're going to get better than expected returns out of the market. But in reality, you're the mark. You're the person that they're going to utilize in this market to get what they want, but they fool you by calling you the client. And many of you are in this situation. You have a relationship with a financial advisor. You have a relationship with a certified financial professor. You have a relationship with these people, and you see yourself as a client, but in reality, you're the mark. And I'm going to show you where so many people became the mark in this system. And then when it happens, The people that they were entrusted to give them counsel don't have any answers. And we're going to talk about that. Okay. So many of you are in this particular type of dynamic and you think you're the client, but in reality, based on the way this con is set up, you're the mark, right? And the only way to not be the mark is to really get a good understanding and a thorough understanding of how this actually works. And that's what we're getting ready to go into. Now, really quickly to let you know, the sponsor of the show is www.thehighestpaid.online. That is a options trading academy. That particular academy is for 3 different people. The person that doesn't like the fact that there's a cap on their income. They know for 2022 how much money they're going to make. They don't like the fact that they got to take time away from their family to make the money that they make. And the fact that they don't like the fact that they're not able to make the kind of money that they desire to make on their 9 to 5. A good candidate for this particular offer is somebody that likes to read. They don't want people to do things for them. They're not looking for somebody to feed them plays. I'm not going to tell you, here's what I'm investing in, and here's what options I'm playing. That doesn't have anything to do with what you're doing. This particular offer is for people that want a level of autonomy in this system based on the fact that they understand how to navigate this system properly. And they have a desire to want to be their own person and do their own thing in this particular environment. We're not doing tag-along pals out here, right? That's not how this works. And I'm going to show you how hitching your wagon to a society or to a scenario that doesn't have your best interest at heart, a lot of times leads people to a long-term downfall. So this particular program is to teach you how to navigate that, but you got to be willing to apply yourself. We're having a particular month in sale before we raise the price, and the particular 15% off code is going to be January 2022. It's JAN 2022. Let's go ahead and get into it. Let me get that banner out of there. So you got to understand the rules of the con to kind of understand how this sets up. Now, let me tell you a story about somebody that I know that got caught up in this particular con, right? So we're going to roll the time period back to like 08, 07, 08. So let's say we got a guy named Tom. And Tom is a bartender down in South Florida. Let's say Tom makes $35,000, $40,000 a year. So he really doesn't make enough money to buy a home in South Florida. So he just rents an apartment, makes his money, does his thing. It's cool. Then Tom starts hearing from some of his friends and associates that they got houses. Now, he never thought he can afford a house. Why? Because he doesn't make enough money to save up the down payment. And also, his credit's really not that great. But Tom's friends tell him, you don't need any of that. Just go talk to this guy, and this guy's going to figure out a way to put you inside a home. So Tom says, cool. He goes and talks to the guy, and the guy says, Tom, based on your stated income, right, we ran your credit. It's not great, but you don't have to worry about that right now. I got a way of putting you inside a home, but this is what I'm going to do. It's something called an adjustable rate mortgage, and I can put you inside a home at a really, really low rate, and we have the option of raising a rate in maybe 3 to 5 years, but you don't have to worry about that because based on the way the economy is going, we're not going to raise the rate. Then what you could do in 3 to 5 years later is you can just refinance and get a lower rate because of the way the economy is going. You know, they're just giving out houses right now. And Tom says, okay, cool. I like that deal. So he gets a house that normally he couldn't afford based on his income and based on his credit worthiness. Gets into that particular home. Housing market collapses. The rate balloons up. He no longer can afford the house, right? What happens is he gets foreclosed out. This happened to a lot of people, 07, 08. Well, why did it happen? It happened because that's what the confidence men wanted to happen to the market. This was not organic. It was not natural. It didn't happen because market forces just made it happen. A bunch of people decided that this is where they were going to get this market to go. And I can give you a very thorough explanation of why we had the housing market crash in 07, 08. But you got to understand is that this is created because you got confidence men, you got inside men making this happen, and then you got the client, aka the mark, right? And that's how that worked. Now, we had this crisis in 07, 08 that tanked the market. I can show you that on the chart, how bad the market sold off. Now, what they needed to do is they needed to get us to where we're currently at right now today. What did they have to do? They had to come up with a new con. And to make that new con work, we got to create a new narrative. We got to create a new inside man. And we got to create a new client, aka the mark, which is you. We need a new set of suckers to take advantage of in this market. Now, why do we need this? Because of the scenario that we were currently going through at that time. And I'm going to kind of show you what I'm talking about. So let's get into it. Let me share this screen out real quick.
and a line of unemployed, mostly white-collar workers stretched for blocks around the Radisson Hotel. More than 1,000 middle managers, stockbrokers, consultants, secretaries, and receptionists had come here hoping to find a job.
If you are just arrived, you step this way.
It was called a career fair, but there was no merriment here, only a whiff of desperation. Many of these people had been out of work for months and burned through their liquid assets, their future even bleaker than the present. Alan Weir, who turned 60 this month, showed us his latest 401k statement, which he hadn't had the courage to open up.
I'm afraid. You're going to open it now? You want me to? Let's do it.
There's good reason for his trepidation. Nearly half of his life savings have vanished in a matter of months.
You went down again. How much are you down overall? Oh, about $140,000. You think you'll ever get it back? I probably never see it back. I was looking to retire probably when I hit 62. Can't do it now. I'll probably be working until I'm at least 70.
Until she lost her job, Kathleen Coleman had spent nearly 30 years working as an executive assistant on Wall Street. She doesn't have much to show for it.
Tell me about your 401k.
Does this stand for all that women?
This is what it was 2005, 2007. You're down below 2005.
Right. And another one went down almost $40,000. One was 88,000, and then it went down to like 50.
How old are you?
54, and I live alone. I don't have any children. I've been a career girl all my life.
Repeated all over the country. In eastern Pennsylvania, 59-year-old Iris Hans lost her accounting job and half of her 401k investments. She's now back in the workforce as a part-time cashier in a grocery store.
Your debit card. You have a great day.
In Dearborn, Michigan, Terry and Donna McNally are barely holding on. He lost his sales job in August. The condo they bought 15 years ago is worth less than their mortgage, and 40% of his 401k retirement savings is gone. Donna is the main provider now.
Let me hear you count to 10. Can you count to 10?
1, 2,
Running a daycare center out of their home.
7, 8, 9, 10.
Are you here for John?
Terry considers himself fortunate to have found part-time work greeting the bereaved at a funeral home and making lattes at Starbucks.
There you go.
Where colleagues young enough to be his grandchildren have taken him under their wing.
Okay, so that's what's currently going on. That's what went on after the whole market fell, right? As a result of what we're causing the housing crisis or the fall in the 08. Some people call it the Great Recession. Now, I want you to understand this. These people that you looked at, right? These were people that worked their whole life, right? These were not the welfare crowd. They were not people looking for a handout. They worked their whole life. They invested in this particular institution. They invested in this economy, and they did what people told them to do. They were told by the financial planners. They were told by the experts. They were told by the people with the academic degrees, work your job, put your savings up, because like we said before, many people had run through their savings, put your savings up and put your money into this 401k, and you're going to retire with a nice lifestyle, right? But see, you got to understand something. That was never the plan for the confidence men. That was never where they were going to take this market. So they get the mark to buy into something that got nothing to do with where they're trying to go. But they need your liquidity to do what they're trying to do. So you keep putting your money into the market without even understanding where your money's going. And that's something I warn people about. If you don't want to study the market, yeah, you can just go buy an overall index fund. The problem is you don't even know where you're putting your money. So when this market tanks, you don't even know what happened to your money. Because essentially you're putting your money down a black hole, hoping to get a return out of a black hole. But that's better than you trying to stock pick, because you really don't know what you're doing by stock picking. However, so many people were told to invest in this particular 401k system. Am I against the 401k? No, I'm against you not knowing where you're putting your money. And we see that working people that had invested their whole life into what they had, end up getting the short end of the stick. But the guys that you see, the confidence men, they made away with even more money. Why? Because this is where they wanted to take this the whole time. This is what I want you to understand. Now we're going to look at it from the housing standpoint, because you got the employee standpoint, then you got the housing standpoint. So you had millions of people after the market fell in 07, 08 that had a house that they paid for that they couldn't figure out how to get their value out of. Let's go into that.
These two words on the American front lawn, do they now have the ring of a prayer, a plea to the market gods? Get me out of here. Now that we're hearing today about a 27% drop in the number of homes sold last month compared to June. 27%. That is terrible news for anyone who has been counting on or driven to selling the family house. Because with the exception of a few markets like, say, Las Vegas or Phoenix, where prices fell fastest and hardest, we are not, says economist Dean Baker, anywhere near done with this yet.
It's going to take a long time in some of these markets in, say, Florida, where you really big bubbles. Those prices are not going to come back anytime soon.
So if there's somebody whose financial planning is based on their house price coming up in value soon, you're saying maybe they should come up with another plan.
Exactly. I mean, there's absolutely no reason to expect that prices are going to go back to the levels they were at 3 or 4 years ago.
Baker was ahead of most economists in spotting the great American housing bubble, so we were curious for his take on some of the innovative ways that Nightline has seen Americans trying to weather the downturn. Among them, well, if you must move but cannot sell, there is something called a home tending company that will send people to live at very low rents in your otherwise empty, otherwise non-selling home, like this one near Salt Lake City. Gina Blair was living here for only $650 a month. The only catch being,
I have to keep it clean. Every single morning I get up and I go through a routine of making the beds.
Okay, so that's that. So what we saw is that you have people that had lost all of their 401k savings, and then you have people that bought these homes at a particular price, and then once the market dumped, they got stuck with this dead asset. And the problem is that when you buy a home at a certain price, you take debt on to buy the house, and then the value of the house loses. Essentially, now the house is a debt; it's not an asset anymore. But now you're paying into this asset that doesn't have the same value. So some people would suggest that you just let them foreclose on the house, but it's going to destroy your credit. So you got to work at how you work it. But I want you to understand, because I'm trying to frame this properly. This is where the market was at. So now they've run their con. They ran this market up, right, using this particular and way in which they do MBSs, and we're going to talk about that later. They ran this market up, and then they decided to tank the market. They tanked the market, and the marks got stuck at the bottom, and they couldn't get out of the market because they was last to find out anyway. Now we're in 08, 09. We got to figure out a new confidence scheme. How do we get this market to go back up? Right? How do we do it? Well, we now create something called quantitative easing. Right? And we're going to go through quantitative easing because utilizing quantitative easing now, we can now create more liquidity to push up this market. But we're not going to do it with the old school stocks like we did it before. So before we was doing it with the old school hardcore, investment stocks, right? The businesses, the construction companies, a lot of the housing companies that actually was like brick and mortar things in which you had to do a lot of capital investment to get a yield out of. We're going to do it now with tech companies. Why? Because we can hype up this idea of tech being a solution to everything. And we're going to produce this category of stocks that have little to no earnings, right? But are really, really appreciated at a very, very high value. And we're going to show you that. So what you get is the PE ratios are really skewed, but the NASDAQ 100 keeps going up. But we got companies with very, very low earnings. The reason why we're doing this is because we need a new category of tickers to run up so we can make more money. But we need the inside man, which is the Fed, to keep giving us the liquidity to keep doing this. So what we got in 08, 09 was literally a repeat of what we got in the early 2000s. But we was able to reframe it a little bit different. Why? Because these companies were a little bit more advanced and we was able to create different narratives around it, right? So this became the new con, the era of the tech stocks. And we're going to kind of show you using actual documentation what I'm talking about. So that's currently what we're in. We're in the tech stock con, where we use the confidence man to push up the tech market. We use the inside man that's going to provide us the monetary policy to keep pushing this market up. But if you study, we got a bunch of companies with really, really high valuations that produce very, very little earnings. And who's going to be the person that's going to take the fall? The client, aka the mark. When this thing dumps, they're going to take the fall, right? And that's who the people that are worried about right now. I know people that have lost $100,000 in their accounts because they were heavily invested in these companies. They got really high prices with very little to no earnings. But they was told it's the best thing since sliced bread because it's tech, 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 tech. And they put a tech assignment on everything. So let's go ahead and get into it. So let me share this out. Let me get rid of this screen. Just go to this window. Okay, so what I want you to do is first we're going to understand quantitative easing, right? So really quickly, what is quantitative easing? It occurs when the Feds buy long-term securities and boost the economy. It increases the money supply, lowers long-term interest rates. It makes it easy for banks to lend to people and to borrow. What we need in quantitative easing is we need that 10-year yield to be very low. How do we do that? We just keep buying long-term securities. The Fed keeps adding more and more liquidity to the market. We keep that 10-year yield low, and that's how we're going to get to this money. That's the game. And it only works if the Fed can keep with that policy. If the Fed can no longer maintain that policy, this big house of cards falls down. So they decided to start doing this in 08, right? And it keeps the bond yields very, very low. Let's get to it. So December 8th of 2010, that's the first QE. The Fed announced it's going to purchase $600 million in bank debt, U.S. Treasury notes, and mortgage-backed securities from banks. By 2010, the Fed had bought 1.25 trillion in MBS. It had also bought $700 billion in longer-term treasuries, most likely 10-year notes, right? Q2, November 2010 to 2011, the Fed would purchase its increased purchases of QE. It's going to buy $600 million of securities. It's going to put the holding at $2 million. Raised gold prices, went to $1,900 an ounce. Operation Twist, 2011, 2012. It bought long-term notes. It stepped up its purchase of MBS. It was support the sluggish housing market, right? Then we got Q3, September to December 2012. It was going to buy $40 million in MBS. Complete Operation Twist. Going to buy another $85 billion in liquidity a month. It would keep the Fed's fund rate at 0 into 2015. It was going to keep purchasing securities until jobs improved substantially. And it was added to boost the economy, not just added contraction. Now we got Q4, 2013 to 2014. It's going to buy $85 billion in long-term treasuries and MBS. And then the end of QE, 2018, 2014, it's going to start tapering, which is what we're currently talking about right now. The unemployment rate was 7%. GDP was 2 to 3. Core inflation had not exceeded 2%. It's going to keep the discount rate between 0 and 0.25 until 2015 and below 2% between 2016. It made its final purchase in 2014, right? Then it's going to start reducing its holdings into 2014 and allow $6 billion of treasuries to mature each month. This sounds like a lot of convoluted information, but what I want you to understand is that what the Fed is doing is adding massive liquidity to the economy by making a lot of purchases in different markets, and essentially it's creating an artificial market. Why does the confidence men want this? Because they want that liquidity, because they're going to utilize that liquidity to go out in the market and make money, and they're going to utilize that liquidity to pump the stocks up. But if you don't understand that's what they're doing, then you don't understand, right, that's what you're involved in. So if the liquidity gets pulled, they're going to tank the market, because there's no reason for them to be over there if they don't get the liquidity. And I want to show you what I'm talking about. So what we're looking at, and let me zoom this in real quick. We're looking at the NASDAQ 100. We're looking at their price earning ratio. I can't find over the past 20 years, trust me, I look for it. What I was able to find from 2018 to 2020. What I want you to look at is the NASDAQ 100 price level and look at the PE, right? Look how the price level with the PE goes up, which means that the price is that much greater than the earnings that are actually being created by these 100 companies inside the NASDAQ 100, right? This is a massive distortion of price earnings. So in 2018, we're at 20. By 2021, we're at 39. But the price level keeps going up. So the price of the NASDAQ, the companies inside the NASDAQ, the 100 companies that produce the earnings, they keep going up, but the price earning keeps getting separated. The price is way greater than the earnings. And you got to understand, this can only be maintained with massive liquidity in the financial markets. Once that liquidity gets taken out, it's going to destroy these companies because they're not creating any earnings, right? They're only appreciating in price, but there is no earnings. But we needed a new con to create a new market to get retail, which is the mark, to put their money back into this particular economy. Now, what I want to show you is that when they raised the rate, they dumped this market. That's what I want to show you. And they dumped the market to get new liquidity. And I'm going to show you in charts, and I'm going to show you with historical context what I'm talking about. When the Fed starts raising rates, they dump the market. The Fed gives them liquidity, the market runs up. When they worried about the rates being raised again, they dump the market. The Fed comes in with liquidity, the market runs up. Now they worried about the rate. We saw over the past 2 weeks is them be worrying about the rate going up. What are they doing now? They dumping the market. What do they want the Fed to do? To come in with more liquidity, and they'll run this market back up. That's what they're doing. You got to understand that if you're in this market, because this is how this market is working. And it didn't start doing this last week. They started this in 08 with this QE. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So we have this particular article from 2019. This is when Janet Yellen was a former chair. She was raising the rates up, right? In 2018, the Fed hikes its benchmark 4 times to a target rate of 2.5% to 2.5%. Now, a 2.5% rate seems out of the world now because we're in an era of the rate being 1.7. The rate at time was like 1, right? In fact, Lilly was less than 1 at one time. But during this particular era, she was trying to raise the rate because she was trying to come out of this QE cycle that we was in, right? So Yellen began the current rate cycle. She hiked the federal funds in 2015, 2016, 3 more times in 2017. Trump got her out of there. And Jerome Powell took over in 2018. You got to remember this date because this is going to be very key, right? Market seeing no chance of a rate hike in 2019, and it's pricing a cut. The Powell Fed initially pointed to 4 rate increases this year, but cut that to 2 in December, right? Well, why did he do that? Because they needed that liquidity, okay? So Yellen was raising the rate, and I'm going to show you with this particular chart, right? Yellen was raising the rate. So let me show you what I mean. 2000, let me bring this up. We're going into 2018. What was the rate? Rate went up, right? Then what we see, the rate started to dump off when Powell got in. Here's the pandemic, right? Him just slamming the rate down. Now the rate went back up. This was last year. Now we're going into this year. Every time you see this rate go up, we see the market selling off. This was last year when the market sold off. This is now when the market is selling off. This right here is around the pandemic where the market it started to go on a tank. But then as we started to raise the rates up, the market started slowing down. What I want you to understand is that this market is addicted to the liquidity that's being created by the Fed. I want to show you this on the NASDAQ, right? Here's the 2018, right? Here's the dump in the market where the rate was going up. Then we go here to 2020. This is the NASDAQ 100. This is the dump because of the pandemic. They lower the rates, the market just takes off. And if you remember during the pandemic, what was holding up the market? All the tech stocks. The stocks that got the really skewed price earnings ratio. You really got to understand is that this is a confidence game that they're running. Okay? This is a confidence game. And I want you to understand that there are no fundamentals to this market anymore. Doesn't mean you can't get money out of the market. What I mean is that there are no fundamentals to the market. Because we have companies in which they're providing very little earnings, but we keep taking the price targets and keep moving them up. And then we keep bullying the Fed to create more liquidity that creates an artificial market that doesn't really exist so we can get more capital to pump into more speculative companies, right? That way we can run them back up again. If you don't understand this is what's going on, you're going to get caught into this, right? Because if they don't get the liquidity that they want, they're going to tank this market. You understand me? Let me show you something. So for all my people that's in 401ks, right? No disrespect to you, right? So you're in a 401k. This is 0708. S&P, the SPY, is around 1,500. It dumps all the way down to around 735. It literally took you into 2013 to get the SPY back to that level. If you're invested in the overall market because of your 401k, it takes years to get back to what it was. If you're looking to retire anytime between these years, I don't know what you're going to do, because you can't retire because your 401k has lost all the value. But when you don't really understand what's going on in this market, you'll never see this type of stuff coming. So you expose yourself to a lot of risk because you're just depending on, oh, I'm just going to work and let the 401k get me out of here. And it can't work that way. Something that Erica Williams put on a video, I want to say about 3-4 days ago, where she talked about having something that can get a return on your money in a lot of different areas. I'm not talking about having 8 different businesses. What I'm talking about is that you take your money and you got a table or a stool with multiple legs. So everything's not based on all my money got to come out of this one area, because a lot of people got caught in this economy to where all I do is work and stash my money into a 401k. Well, you're 60 years old and you're getting ready to retire in 5 years in 07, and the market goes like this, right? So your 401k loses 40% of its value. You've been working on that thing for 20 years. Now your retirement gets pushed back to 70, and that's if you don't lose your job. If you lose your job, you may never recover from this financially. And you didn't do anything wrong. You invested in what they told you to invest in. You put the 6 months of savings aside and the 9 months of savings aside like they told you to, but it didn't matter because you was out of work for 2 years. And then when you got a job, right, you didn't get a job that was paying you what your last job was paying you. And it's harder for you to get a job because of your age. They don't want to hire you. Why? Because you want too much money. That older white dude that got that job at Starbucks, he's overqualified for that position. He got to take a position that somebody that's 21 years old would take, trying to support his wife, and they trying to move into a retirement. And then she got to take a job as a nanny or as a school instructor teaching schools. This is what happens when you don't really understand how this market works, and you just put your money somewhere and you don't understand what's going on with your money. And this is what I want you to understand. You have to really take on the responsibility of understanding what's really going on, because this is a confidence game. And these guys, these investment bankers, they don't care about what happens to you personally. They're just in this to make money. And I want to warn you about getting miseducated on how this market actually works by entertainers. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about, because this is one of the most extreme examples of somebody that either doesn't know what they're talking about, or they work for these people and their job is to misinform the public. And I'm going to show you what I mean. Let me get rid of this, and let me go back to this particular screen share. Okay, this is just what I'm looking for. Okay, so this is this guy's explanation of the housing market crisis.
That the American dream was to have a house. That was the dream. And so all of the people who lived here in apartment buildings couldn't have the American dream. Some of them because they had bad credit or didn't have jobs that would allow them to afford houses. Did you remember how expensive houses used to be? Oh, those days aren't coming back. Anyway, they didn't get a house, so they couldn't have a part of the American dream because of the big evil bank. I should put horns on the big evil bank. They wouldn't loan these people any money. So what happened? The unions and acorns, you know, with their baseball bats, along with the permission and the blessings of the beautiful, beautiful people in Washington. They said, yeah, we'll back you up. These banks should give these loans to people who can't afford them. So they started getting little houses too that they couldn't afford. But they couldn't pay the big evil bank back when things got tough, because there is no pot of gold. At the end of the rainbow, there is nothing. And so what happened? The crash. Got it? The American dream, which is not owning a house. The American dream, some people couldn't have it. They went to the unions and acorn and politicians to pressure the banks, which equals a crash. I don't think the story is right. I think there's another story. Because I just told you the story, and as I'm saying it, these people didn't go here. These people, the unions, Acorn, and the left, may I say Cloward and Piven, yes, we're in this frame. And they said, how do we get here? Well, we define the American dream as owning a house, and we find people who are really upset, not now, but after we go and visit them like little angels here and say, oh, you don't have the American dream, it's because of them. We can get the politicians because also we have, I'm going to call it Washington dirtbags. Washington dirtbags, unions, Acorn, the left, wanted to crash, wanted power, wanted to transform the system. And so they take these people, stir them up, tell them it's the American dream, they get the banks to loan the money.
Okay, that's the most ridiculous assumption of financial analysis I've ever heard in my whole life. And people really listen to this type of stuff and thinks this how this works. No talk of MBS, right? No talk of MBS securities. No talk of the fact that when you buy an actual mortgage, the fact that the bank doesn't hold your mortgage, it actually takes your mortgage and turns it into a security and sells it to somebody else because it produces a yield. And that's what really caused this. No talk of the fact that these particular investment banks was able to influence the rating agencies to take subprime mortgages and rate them as A-rated bonds so they can securitize them and sell them to people. None of that comes out because his audience doesn't understand finance on that particular level. So this is the question. Do you think that a politician can tell Jamie Dimon what to do? Guys, the guy is a international banker. The guy that owns BlackRock. Do you think a politician or Acorn or the unions can tell that guy what to do? This guy manages $9 trillion in assets, right? These are the people that are moving the market in the way in which they wanted to do. And these are the people that created the conditions for the financial crisis in 2008. Wasn't Acorn, and you notice how they don't talk about Acorn anymore because Obama's no longer in office. They against unions unless it's a police union, then they pro-union, right? So they're against every union except the police union. That's the only union that they like, right? And the fact that this particular scenario was created because you had the left, along with these unions, right, told poor people that they deserve a house, and then they bullied the banks and politicians to get them the house. But if you listen to these type of assumptions, you will be totally uneducated on how this actually works because he's running his own kind, or else he's just horribly uneducated about how this market actually functions, right? The housing crisis was created because they were able to take subprime mortgages and rate them as A-rated bonds and sell them to people, right? And then once the market started to fall and those people could not pay to keep producing the yield, people had to get those debt assets off their books, and they took whatever price they could get for them, and that's what essentially sank this whole market. And everybody was invested in this except the little guy. He didn't even know what was going on. So I want you to understand something, that you really got to take the responsibility on yourself to understand how these markets work, because you will spend your whole life investing in this system, and you don't really understand how it actually functions. And when they pull the rug out from under you, it can literally take everything away from you. Some of these people in this video, I feel for them because I don't know how they get their life back. When you're in your late 50s, early 60s, and you got to work at Starbucks with teenagers because you lost your whole life in a 401k. When you're that woman who was working as an executive assistant, she's working on Wall Street, but Wall Street, when it went under, they fired at least thousands of people. And she's right. She's losing her job to younger women, right, who are more attractive, even though she got a better track record, because that's just the way the system functions. And she also lost her 401k. And she was a career woman. And there's nothing wrong with that. She shouldn't be punished for that because that's what she chose to do with her life. Men get to choose what they want to do with their life every day. But you got to really understand what's going on around you, because this is a confidence game. And the game is to get you to buy into this stuff and make you think everything's all right, but you don't even really understand how it works. And when they want to pull the rug on this stuff, they do it. They secure their financial position, and you get left holding the bag. And that's what I want you to understand. You got to decide that you're not going to be the mark. Even if they call you the client, they see you as the mark. If you're dealing with a certified financial planner and they cannot explain to you how inflation, right, will impact your retirement in 20 years or 15 years or 10 years. Because if we look at the rate of inflation today, it's not the same as it was 20 years ago. So we would have to be idiots to believe that the rate of inflation in 20 years is going to be the same thing as today. So if you get $1 million in your 401k, you're 30 years old. By the time you're 65, you got $1 million or $2 million in your 401k. Based on the rate of inflation in 25 years, what is going to be the spending power of that particular $2 million? If you're dealing with a certified financial planner and they cannot explain that to you, in my opinion, you're dealing with the wrong person, because they have to bring in what inflation is going to do, because I don't think they're going to be able to lower inflation, right? The only way they can keep this liquidity going is allow inflation to keep moving up. If they try to bring the inflation down, they got to raise the rate up. If they raise the rate up, they're going to tank the market, because they're going to pull their money out of the market in a response because they want cheap capital. So we're in the catch-22 right now. But if you're dealing with people that are telling you just store your money away or put your money into this particular vehicle and it's going to stack up, they need to have a conversation with you about inflation over the next 20 to 30 years, which is going to be a real life situation for a lot of people. And it's just going to be something that Americans are going to have to deal with. We're going to have to accept the fact that we're living in an environment with a high rate of inflation, right? And that's why I keep trying to press on people. You got to figure out how to make some more money, because many of you are being told to put 9 months of savings up and to put your money into a Roth IRA or 401k, and you're making $30,000 a year. You don't make enough money to do those things. You need to figure out how to create more income for yourself. And then also, in my opinion, figure out how to create scenarios where they're going to continue to pay you and your payout is going to be adjusted on the rate of inflation. But that's all I want to talk about with the confidence, man. So if you got any questions, put them in the comments, and we're going to go through the comments and we're going to get up on out of here. Let's go ahead and scale down. Yeah, definitely. That's a real deal. You know, you got to be real tapped into your family. But I agree with you right there. Appreciate the $5, Julian Brown. PH program, appreciate it. Exactly. And if we're not going to have that conversation, AD, about how these people utilize mortgages to securitize them, and how they took people that, you know, when I was coming up, man, if you wanted to get a mortgage, then people literally would ask your pastor to vouch for you. They would ask your third grade teacher to vouch for you. They might ask your boss to vouch for you before they would give you a home loan, because they couldn't underwrite it without really knowing that you were going to pay it back, because they couldn't securitize it without it literally being an A-rated bond. When they was able to get those particular rating agencies that allowed them to essentially rate anything, right, as an A-rated bond, and they was able to create those tranches where we could take those C-rated bonds and those B-rated bonds and maybe have 20% of A's and the rest be B's and C's, and then we can rate that as an A, and then we can securitize it. It was game over, man. That's really how they crashed this market. But nobody wants to say that. It's the left, and it's the most, I don't know where these guys come up with this type of stuff, but they're entertainers. So just like an entertainer who was once a correctional officer in the state of Florida can present himself as a drug kingpin, I guess an entertainer could talk about it's the acorn and the left is the reason why the housing market fell in 08. It's just all entertainment at the end of the day, but it don't add up. You know, it just really don't make any sense. Right, he said unions and acorns. Yeah, I don't have any problem. And I saw that show where he talked about Glenn Beck. He used to do radio in Tampa, quiet as kept. I used to listen to him back in the day on Tampa radio. But my biggest issue was that in this particular area, he's totally off base. I did appreciate the show where he talked about how black people participated in the American Revolution. But I think his producers gave him bad information on this show. And I really think that he just does what his producers tell him to do. So that was just it. With this particular show, he was way, way off base. But he programmed a lot of people that this is what happened in the financial 08 crisis. And I disagree with that one. His show on Blacks in the American Revolution was a good show, though. Okay, I'm going to check that out, AD. And this is why I tell people, watch Margin Call, because it deals with the MBS market. And it deals with what started the crisis and where they dumped those MBSs and they took losses on them because they realized how bad they were. And also go watch The Big Short again, because the Big Short deals with the MBS market, and it teaches you the history of the actual MBS market. Most people don't understand the history of the MBS market. It did not always exist. But once they started being able to securitize, this is what I tell people. When you're looking at a firm, you got to know what business they're actually in. They're in the business of securitization. They're not in the buy now, pay later business. That's not their model. When you're looking at Carvana, they're in the securitization business. If the 10-year rate goes up and it costs them more money now, it becomes more expensive for them to give you a car loan. It's going to harm their whole business model because Carvana is not in the business of selling you a car. Like any used car dealership, they're in the business of selling you that loan. That's how they make their money. Then they take that particular loan and they got a special delivery vehicle. They give it to that and then they sell it to somebody else because it's going to produce a yield. All right, well, L. London, man, we're going to wish for the best for you. Appreciate it, Joe Brass. Yeah, I believe you too. I believe it was inside men on those AMC GME plays. I really believe that. A lot of people still caught in that play. And they talking about something that's going to go up. It might, but it might not. Right? This game is deeper than what a lot of people don't understand. Okay, drop 16. I don't know how to do that. I'm still trying to figure that out. So that's my bad on the double audio. Because on my end, it sounded like it's just regular audio. So I may have to get a mixer. You know, this StreamYard is something different. So I will work on that because I can't hear it on my end. That's the problem. It doesn't sound double. That's my issue. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's get down to the bottom of the comments. Okay, so Erica says, how can people start and educate themselves? So first, Erica, what I would recommend to anybody is to go get a basic microeconomic book on a college level. You can go get one off Amazon, probably used for like less than $100. And just understand macroeconomics, understand microeconomics, because then once you understand that, then you'll understand some of the moves that the Fed is making, how those moves are going to impact the economy. The average person doesn't even understand how federal monetary policy impacts this country. But it's impacting them every day. And then from there, you can look into studying, like reading things like, Wall Street Journal, Market Beat, any market-based publication, and stay away from political publications that talk about the finances because they're going to put a political skew on it. And when you're looking at the confidence men in the screenshot, those guys are not playing a political game. They're playing a game of finance. And a lot of times, they got to put a political narrative on it, so they're going to kind of skew it. But I would really tell everybody to really study macroeconomics and microeconomics, because when you're dealing with a financial planner, I'm not saying that they don't have a value. They do have a value because they can teach you things that you don't know. But they're looking at things from a microeconomic standpoint as an individual, but all individuals are impacted by the macroeconomic situation. So when we don't understand macroeconomics, we maybe don't understand that if CPI keeps going up, and the rate of inflation keeps going up, the $2 million that I'm trying to save by retirement may not be worth enough money. This is why you see guys in the UK, when they get their pension, they go to Thailand. Why? Because they can stretch out their pension because their money spends a lot farther because it's in US, it's in British pounds than it is if they were to stay in the UK, they would run out of money. These are some of the decisions I think a lot of Americans are going to have to make. A lot of people may have to move to Mexico. They may have to move to Costa Rica, because a pension can move a lot farther, because I think we're going to be living in a world to where you could be sitting on $2 or $3 million, and it might be like you sitting on $200,000 or $300,000. I just think we're going in that direction because of the cost. I can show you places in Atlanta where, you get a townhome and they want damn near $1 million for a townhome. So if you got $1 million, you can go to Atlanta, go off Ponce de Leon, go to Smyrna, and buy a townhome for $800,000, and you got 200 grand yet. But that's your $1 million. And I just think we don't understand the way they're moving this economy with monetary policy. It's going to be really, really expensive to live here. So you got to be bringing in more money in relationship to what you make. But what I think we're going to see is that, this is my own personal opinion, is that people are going to move south like they're doing now. They're going to make everything start to move up. And then they're going to probably have to move to like Alabama, Mississippi, some of the Midwestern states, because it's going to be too expensive to live in the South. Because the way things are going in Florida going to be like New York in 10 years. You ain't going to be able to afford to live down there. Yeah, CDSs, but Geechee Dan, they had to do the MBSs first to do the CDS, because the CDS was an insurance against that MBS. But I feel you. Them CDSs was real too. Exactly. But see, Roscoe, they did it because it was making everybody money. Right? So because it was making everybody money, and it was making the people that was involved money, and because we can securitize anything, so we got to a point to where any loan we sold, we can package it as a security. Right? Because we had the inside man as the rating agencies. So the rating agencies now became the inside man. They gave us whatever rating we want on any security. So we could take a tranche and make it 10% A's and 80% C's, and it'll be an A. And then we can rate it as an A and get somebody to buy it, and they thinking they're going to get a good yield out of it without realizing that how high risk that particular tranche is. Once they did that, it was over. So with every con, you're going to have the confidence man, you're going to have the inside man, and you're going to have the mark. And that's just what they did it. Definitely. And the guy that figured it out, they fired the guy. I feel you. AIG was the mark. I feel you. Yeah, they went under behind that. I think Lehman went under too. Me personally, I think inflation is going to be forever for the rest of our life. I don't see how they can really lower the inflation rate. One, inflation is conservative, but that's the issue. So I don't think the inflation rate I think it's higher than 7%, because they don't add everything in. So, and I think the CPI is higher than what, because we know the CPI doesn't add in energy and doesn't add in food costs. So that's the issue. Yeah, Geechee Dan, but I don't understand how to do it, because when I watch the tutorials on YouTube about how to play videos, they're not getting double audio. And I did exactly how they showed me how to do it. So I don't know how to do it. Maybe I need to mute my mic. That might be the question. But the problem is that when I'm doing it, I did it and played it back on a recording and it sounded fine. But when it's going through this live stream, it's picking up other audio. So that's the issue. Yeah, it is. Because what they do is they make the float smaller. But what that can do, AD, is it can raise earnings, because we're dealing with less stock, so it can boost up the earnings. That's what Avis did. Avis did a buyback on their last earnings. They bought up like a billion something amount of shares, and I think that's one of the reasons why they squeezed up. But it doesn't matter, because their revenue is going to go down. So I agree with you. They do stock buybacks. But they allow them to manipulate it, and I'm not mad at them. Exactly. But Glenn Beck gonna tell you that it was Acorn and the unions. They told guys like Jamie Dimon to sell home loans to people that normally couldn't get them. If we want to believe that. Okay, so how to get rich? One of the words after he said 2 minutes comfortable deploy. Yeah. I just think it's unfortunate. I don't think we're giving people a real analysis of what kind of money they're going to need in the future. If we look at, and maybe I can show it real quick. Let me show the 10-year rate. Can we go back on it? How far back can I go? Okay, let me show some people something real quick, because I don't think this is something that people really understand. Okay, so let me get rid of this screen real quick, because this is something that I don't think people really truly understand about the 10-year. And this is not just the 10-year, but I want people to really see this. So there was a time in like the 80s where people said, if you get $1 million, you can put it in a bank and you can live off the interest. But look at what the 10-year was in the 80s. Right? This is 1981. Look at what the 10-year rate was. Right? Look at what the 10-year rate was, between in the 80s. So we were living in a different era where capital was very expensive compared to now. Then we see in the 90s, it just starts to decline, right? And what people will tell you is that, you know, the market was going crazy, but the 10-year was still 15.2. So that's what I think we don't understand is that this 10-year and the cost of capital is just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. It's causing a lot of liquidity, but the problem is that as a response to it, it's just continue to push up inflation. So if we look at the 10-year, I had a guy, he did a little show. He was like, well, the 10-year keeps going down, but we got to understand that the 10 years going down. But if we look at it on like a yearly snapshot, it's really going up, right? And what they're doing is that this rate, you know, this is unacceptable to the confidence men, right? They'll destroy the stock market if we was able to get back to these numbers. They'll destroy it. They'll sell the whole market off, probably put all their money overseas somewhere. So what I'm looking for, and you can kind of rate this out, somebody showed me the other day, as we start to get close to 2, I think it's potential that we get another dump. Whether that happens next week, in 6 months, who knows? But I think as we start getting over 2, I think they dump the market again in response because they want to force the Fed to give them the rate they want. And if we look at what was the rate down here, it was like nothing. They wanted negative rates. So we're just dealing with a bunch of people to where they want the cost of capital to really be nothing because then they can take that capital and go make a lot of money. And they're not tripping on inflation. Why? Because they got so much money, it don't matter. You know, guys like Jamie Dimon, if a steak is $100, it don't bother him. Yeah, I think so. I think people, after they leave the big cities of the South and they run the prices up there, they're going to go to Mississippi, they're going to go to Alabama, they're going to go to Arkansas, they're going to go to parts of the Midwest that are relatively inexpensive just so they can have somewhere to live because they're not going to be able to afford to live any place else because the cost of living is just going to keep going up. That's what I think. We'll see. Now, I don't use OBS. I just use StreamYard. I have OBS, but OBS seemed even more complicated than StreamYard. So I was just trying to use, I was just screen sharing the video through StreamYard, but people is getting the feedback. I don't know. I don't know because I'm not hearing it on my end. That's the problem. Yeah, in my opinion, inflation, well, one inflation is over 7%. That's a conservative number. That's not the real rate of inflation. All right, it never is. But do I believe inflation is going to keep going past 7%? Definitely. And I think people need to be prepared for that. Yeah, Apple killing it. Okay, so he says AIG wasn't the mark, the American people was the mark. Oh, they increase EPS. So they make EPS look better because they decrease the amount of shares available to the public. So if you want to know anything about crypto, I'm going to tell you to go to Buy the Hood. Reach out to them. Right? I'm not a crypto guy. I'm not a real estate guy. I'm a trader. So give me a number on that because you say mass exodus. Is that one person or is that 10 million people? So give me a number on that if you can. Yeah, you're going to see a lot more of that. You know, because this whole, you know, we know because I'm from the South, there's whole parts of Alabama, Mississippi. I mean, if you got $1 million, you know how much land and how big of a house you can get in Alabama? Like you'll get 6 acres. You know, it was a football player, a guy played for the Raiders at one time. He played for Alabama. He spent like $1 million something for a house he had caught on fire. That house was enormous on a big piece of land. He tried to buy that same piece of property in Atlanta. He'll spend $15 million to do that. So, you know, it's a lot of opportunity in those areas. You just got to be cool with living in a rural area. But I think that's where a lot of people's going to end up going because they're not going to be able to afford to live nowhere else. Because if the money that I'm making, if I was to live in Mississippi, I'll be balling. I'm just not a flashy person, but I'll be balling. Why? Because your dollar will go a lot farther because nobody out there really got any money. Same place with Alabama, same place with parts of Arkansas. You know, a lot of us are attracted to these cities that's really expensive because there's a lot going on, but it's expensive. That's the issue, you know, because I came out of Atlanta and Atlanta's crazy and then Orlando's going crazy. So what happens if we keep taking the L's or dumping the market, but just keep increasing the rate? I don't understand the question. Drop 16. 22% returns. I don't know, but what did they want, Erica? They wanted like 200% because people are addicted to them Tesla returns. That's a great return if you just keep getting it. You know what I'm saying? If you just keep getting, I mean, imagine being able to take your money and get 22% and just keep getting 22%, right? And then especially with real estate, you know, because we can adjust it for inflation. But I think people are addicted to quick short-term returns. So it is what it is. Yeah, I see that too. A lot of people, I see Mexico, like I said, Colombia. I know a lot of people went to Costa Rica. I had a student of mine for my options academy. I think he lived in Costa Rica because you can take your pension and go down there and live real good. And they pretty much, it's comparable to the United States. It's not exactly, but it's comparable. And you can stretch your pension. So I just think that's what a lot of Americans may have to consider because it's just going to be so expensive to live inside the United States because of inflation, right? And that's something that people are not talking about. So I really think as a certified financial planner, you can really niche yourself by teaching people how to save money to make your exodus to another part of the world. You know, I'm going to give you a plan to save money to make your exodus because I think for a lot of people living inside the United States, thinking that they're going to have that little lump sum of money, that's not going to be enough money if that's all you got because it's just not going to be enough. You know, I just don't think people are considering that. 1 million people. I don't think 1 million people is really a lot of people to cause a big impact. Facts. 2 acres, good deal. It's out there. I mean, it is what it is. It's Jackson is a black city in Mississippi, but you got to deal with Jackson. See, some of y'all, man, is good people. Y'all could go to these areas and, man, make a change and live real cheap. You know, so Jackson is pretty much a black city in Memphis, but, you know, Jackson off the ground for real. So it may need solid people to go out there. But, you know, all of Mississippi ain't bad. It's just what part of it you in. You know, but all the money's left Mississippi. Same thing with Arkansas, same thing with Alabama. It's just not a lot of money there. That's why it's so cheap to live there. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about, Urban. Right? You got to continue to make more and more money. And that's something that people are not talking about. You know, if this inflation keeps going up, you're going to have to make more and more just to maintain. Because there was a time where you could get $1 million at one time and put in the bank and it would return enough for you to live off of and you never had to touch your million. This was like in the 80s, but we saw how that 10-year was in the 80s. Those days are over with and they never coming back. These confidence men, they cannot do what they want to do in the markets without cheap capital. And so whatever policy they need that's going to get them their cheap capital, that's what they're going to be in for. And they'll dump this market to get it. Yeah, I feel you. I understand it. You know, I get it. I wouldn't go to those places to get women, right? But I can understand going there to get a lower cost of living because you're trying to stretch your money, right? Because that's one of the things I was talking about with the travel channels. I was like, I was traveling to Chicago and the UK and LA. And I'm like, oh, the travel channels is traveling to Asia and Central South America. I was like, I can do that because it don't cost a lot, but I didn't get what they was doing at that time. So I was paying a lot of money to travel. They was traveling for the low because your dollar, American dollar, stretches real far there. But if you don't mind living there, I don't want to live in the Philippines. Just me personally, I don't have nothing against Filipino people. I don't want to live there. I definitely don't want to live in the Dominican Republic either. So I don't know where, like I said, I might consider Colombia, but a lot of these places that they say they're going to, I don't want to live there. Right? I don't want to live around them people. No disrespect to them. I just don't want to live there. Okay, I feel you. It is a problem worldwide. But there's countries in which our dollar spends so well that where you have an advantage. And that's why a lot of people travel to these different parts. So like Urban Homestead, if you was to move to Colombia, you might be balling, right, in Colombia. Same thing with the Philippines. You know, what people are paying to live in America, you can pay that same money to live in the Philippines and live real nice. Because you're bringing over, I think the exchange is like 45-1 between the peso over there and the US dollar. So your retirement for a lot of people, they realize it stretches a lot farther. But so they just attitude is I'm out. And the Brits have been doing that for a very long time. You know, they've been going to Asia for a long time to stretch out their pension because it won't last as long inside the UK as it lasts in the Philippines. Exactly. You got Jackson. Jackson's pretty much like a black city. You know, they got a lot of issues, but they just need positive people like Prime and other people to go there and try to turn it around. And y'all, you know, you can have your own little scenario, but yeah, you still in Mississippi, but you know, it is what it is. You know, everybody, you know, everything got to get a start. Exactly. So Arkansas got 1,000 acres. Yeah. Yeah, their headquarters is out there too. I know a guy who was he went to become an accountant for Walmart out there. He used to be a Walmart manager. He got in the job out there as an accountant because the hours was killing him and his family time, you know, because they're going to work you to death as a manager. I get it, and I understand that. I ain't against you. I got my people got land in South Carolina too because my people from Walterboro. So I ain't against it. But somebody else may want to live there on that land, and they can pay you, and that's going to be your yield. Yeah, that's 100% correct, Erica. And I think the wife or husband owns it. You don't own it, from my understanding. So then you can get on, but so then if y'all break up, you don't have no ownership of it, from my understanding. So that's another issue. And that's one of my objections to going to overseas is you can't own nothing over there. So that's one of my objections, you know, is that you just living over there paying money, but you won't have any ownership. But if it works for somebody, it works for them. But, you know, I don't, you know, like I said, everybody go over there for different reasons. It ain't a woman in the world going to make me go, you know, 20,000 miles. You know, that's just me though. I'm passing up a whole bunch of women just to get to her. Yeah, it ain't nothing against them. I just don't want to live there. Because I know people that was in the military. So I had a guy who was in the military. And, you know, the Philippines is a big naval spot because I think a member of my family was born in the Philippines. In fact, it might have been my mother. My mother might have been born in the Philippines because my grandfather was in the Navy during World War II. He told me once you get outside of Manila, he says there's nothing going on. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if I want to live like that. He told me, like, once you get outside of Manila, he said, ain't nothing really going on because, you know, they haven't really developed that whole country like that. So it is what it is. And I think he got children from a Filipino woman because he was stationed in the Philippines. But I know I don't want to live in the Dominican Republic. I don't want to live there. No disrespect to them. I don't want to live down there. Right? Because them chicks don't move me like that. You know, that's the thing is these dudes is moved by women like that. That don't really move me to be going to the DR. Like, it just don't. But that's just me. Everybody different. Big up to them, and I hope it work out for them. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I agree with you right there. But, you know, somebody got to make that change, though, because Atlanta ain't always what it was. Atlanta was not always what it was. Miami definitely was not always what it was. Miami used to be a place that senior citizens went to retire. And they turned it into a big area. So somebody got to be willing to make that change. And if you're one of the first people to get in to make that change, you're going to get all the benefit when the change get made because you're going to get in early. So I have family I got a family member that live in Gastonia. They was going to Gastonia in the early 2000s. Well, in Gastonia, you can get land for like $10,000. You can't get that in Gastonia anymore because everybody that don't want to pay to live in Charlotte is now moving to Gastonia because it's like a 30-minute drive. So if you have the ability to forecast, which is something I've been trying to teach you through the course, you can forecast and model. You can start forecasting that, you know what, based on my connections, based on my network, I think this area of Mississippi is going to be a hot area over the next 20 to 25 years. I'm going to get in now and I'm going to be in the driver's seat when everybody start trying to move there. You know, and that's a lot of times that's how it works. Not as a whole, but I think you're going to have certain aspects of America going to be real tough to live in. I really do. I think you have some Africa that are a little tough to live in. Yeah, and I agree with you. So I know some people having a lot of success over there because it's a continent. So you know, most people can find somewhere. I know a brother that trades for Forex. He in East Africa somewhere. But he lives over there. Yeah, because he want to talk about women. I don't know why these dudes ain't talking about Africa. They talking about these women in Central South America. I'm not saying that, and these Asian women, I'm not saying that they're not attractive, but you know, Africa got a whole continent of women, but they don't never talk about that. But you know, it's a lot behind that. We ain't gonna get into it. I feel you. Yeah, that's my issue because Eric, I want to buy land in Venezuela, but I'm worried about the government taking from me. because I forgot that dude's name, Maduro. He might decide that he needs some land, and they just seize my property. Because I believe once they figure that thing out in Venezuela, I believe Venezuela gonna take off. They got too much oil down there for them to stay poor forever. But the problem is that that situation, they're so unstable that the government can take everything from you. You don't have any recourse through the courts. But yeah, if I could, I would go buy land there, because I know once they figure that thing out, that thing is going to take off. Right? Or they can never figure it out like Cuba, which would be unfortunate, because they got way more going for them than Cuba does. No disrespect to Cubans. I mean, go down there and see what they're talking about. You know, it might be some agriculture you could do down there. Yeah. Yeah, Florida's something else. When Miami starts to flood, I'm going to figure out they still want to live down there. Do your thing. So it's all travels with tax deductible. Yeah, you're right. Well, the people on YouTube, because they advertise, you know, it's easy to get that big audience for women. So Adrian Jeffrey, they never hear people talking about going to Thailand, going to Central and South America, right, for business, right? Because I talked about going to Venezuela trying to buy land, right? They never talk about that. It's always for women. Well, that ain't never been an issue for me. So that don't draw me. Like I said, you know, there was a joke about David Chappelle going to Africa to do drugs. And the guy said, well, why would he travel across all these drug places in America to go to Africa to do drugs? I feel the same way about women. All these women in America, why would I leave all these women in America to go somewhere else to deal with? It's enough women here. But that's me. Everybody different. So I don't down people for doing what's going to make them happy. I don't know Kevin Theodore. I don't know. Some place where it's not going to be really expensive to live. You know, because if you got money or you got a good retirement, people don't know about Key West, but you got to be cool with the environment and you got to be willing to deal with hurricanes. But it's nothing but retirees down there. They all take care of each other. But it's a big hurricane risk. It's a big flood risk, but it's a really nice area, right? And it's full of retirees, right? Yeah, I feel you. You got to get your bread up. Yeah, they got the wrong people over the economy, right? Because I will go down there and try to make a deal that work for everybody. But I'm not no kind of person where I want all the money to come to me. You know, they got so much oil, it don't make no sense. But you got to have competent people that want the best for the people, right? You know, I just think it's terrible that they got all that going for them and the masses of people is getting killed and doing bad because we can't figure out how to make a deal that's going to work to make everybody happy. Everybody ain't going to be 100% happy, but everybody can be a little bit happy and let the people get the benefit instead of doing what they're doing, which is, I don't know how it works, but Venezuela may be on their way to becoming another Cuba. And they might be cool with that because they sell oil black market to Cuba and other places to generate some revenue, but they're not selling what they could be selling. But to do that, you're going to have to cut deals with different people, and they may not want to do that. It's their oil. I can't tell them what to do with it. I'm not Venezuelan. Yeah, he got a good channel. He got a real good channel. You know, because I think his citizenship, he got citizenship from some island in the Caribbean. So he denounced his American citizenship, which is rare because that's a white man with money. But he had so much objections with the Trump administration because they were trying to make him bring his money back to the United States so they could tax it. He denounced his citizenship. He got rid of his citizenship. And I think he's a citizen of some country in the Caribbean, and he paid money to become a citizen. You know, dude is moving on another level. And I got to respect him because the way he moving, you got to have a lot of responsibility for yourself. You got to pay to move like that. And you got to always be thinking about your long-term future. But he doing his thing. He got a real good channel too. Yeah, quiet as kept, Roscoe. There's some really good women in the UK. London got some, bad women. Because they get women from all over the world. And they also got a lot of African chicks there from different parts of Africa. Then you got the women that's living there. So like London got some, but you know, like I said, London's expensive. So they don't know about that because it's expensive to go to London. Like, you know, you could go to Central South America and live there probably for 6 months on what it costs just to fly to London. Then you got to stay there. Then you got to fly back. So, you know, it's a reason why they're not in certain markets. But yeah, London got some really, really good looking women. Trust me, I know. Yeah, Key, you got to like the environment, though. Like, that got to be how you want to live. So if you like going to the beach, if you like nature, if you like water, if you like kind of like, it's not country because it's beach, but it's kind of like more of a rural type environment, Key West the place to be, right? But it's a nice area if you just want to just take it easy and get out of the rat race, because nobody comes down there unless they got some business down there. But real estate prices in Key West have been high forever because of such a small area. So it's almost impossible to buy a house down there. So what a lot of people do is they rent from somebody else, but they just live down there. So I can only imagine what the real estate market is down there. But yeah, Key West is a nice area. Quiet as kept. Yeah, he doing his thing. I can't take nothing from him. Dude doing his thing. And he put his money where his mouth is, and he can give you a lot of education on how to actually do what he's doing. He talked about having gold in different parts of the world. Like, dude almost living like a secret agent lifestyle. But it take money to do that. And he got the money and he doing his thing. Like I say, but I know he's serious. When a Anglo-Saxon dude gets rid of his American citizenship, I know he ain't playing with these people. Because he didn't like the fact they were trying to make him bring his money back to the United States. Okay, so that seems to be pretty much everybody. So appreciate everybody coming through, man. We had 103 people on the chat. If you didn't like the video, I want to encourage you to like it on the way out, because we got 69 likes, but we got 102 views. So I really want to encourage you, learn these markets, right? Don't be the mark in these markets. Okay, that's who these people is kind of setting you up for. Don't be the mark, right? Learn what's going on. Learn, try to understand it. Don't just put your money down a black hole thinking that you're going to get a return in 20 years. It won't happen like that. And I really want to encourage you to get a basic understanding of macro and microeconomics so you can kind of understand where this country is going. So people's not telling you that, this next dump in the market is not because of unions and Acorn and yada, yada, yada. Like, you really understand what's taking place. Because if we look at the chart, they dumped the market to get Powell to lower the rates again. Then once he lowered the rates, the market started running up again. Last year, when they thought the rate did go up, they dumped the market again, right? Now they think the rate is going to go up. They dumping the market again. We got Fed people talking on Monday. They may give some context of where they think we'll go with federal monetary policy. If they don't like their context, they may dump the market again because they want liquidity, because they need the liquidity to do what they're doing. And the hell with the masses of American people that got to deal with a rising inflation rate. That's not the issue, because they don't have those kind of issues, right? If gas is $30 a gallon, they can still pay for it. They'll be all right. They still can fly their private planes. They got so much money, it doesn't matter to them. So you got to educate yourself and get an understanding so you can be effective in this economy, because even if you want to leave and go to another country, you got to know I got to be getting money right now so I can make my exit. You cannot have your heads in the cloud. It's not going to put you in a great position. So I appreciate everybody coming through. Like I said, we're getting ready to raise the price of the course on, I believe, Tuesday. It's going to be the first of the month. We will be moving that price up because the price is way lower than the value. If you got any questions, hit me up in the comments. This is David W. Williams. I'll talk to you later.